Charles Bogart speaking.
I hear now.
Okay.
No?
Thank you guys for having me here. Those of you out there in Zoom land can't see that I'm walking around with a cane in my hand. I was up Covington yesterday. They were filming a documentation on the Covington Depot. They had me up there in my CNO uniform, and I was doing good. And then they asked me to go stand over on this loose pile of dirt and bricks and that. I knew it was a bad idea. I knew I shouldn't do it, but the producer director talked me into doing it. I got a bad knee and a bad back. And I got up there and I was standing there, and all of a sudden the brick my left foot was on began to move, and I began to move. And the next thing I knew, I was doing a tumble knees hitting the ground, going down, laying on the ground. And I'm laying there, oh, and I start to get up. And they said, oh no, you can't get up. Procedure is we got to call EMTs. So I laid there, and the EMTs came up and checked me and said, we're going to take you to the hospital. You don't have to take me to the hospital. You're getting a long version of a short story. Anyway, the bottom line was I finally got up, and they left me alone. And I am still suffering for the effects. And use common sense when people tell you do something that you know is stupid, and don't do it. Does that make sense? Okay. So anyway, I was asked to do some photographs of things around here. I believe Larry said Lexington, but the Capital City Museum over in Frankfort has a great collection of railroad photographs. I don't have all of them. Before I forget it, if any of you guys have pictures of rail scenes in Frankfort and Franklin County that you'd be willing to share with the museum, we'd love to have it to put it into our railroad photograph collection. We're trying to build a collection of photographs of railroad activities in around the city. We have a number of photographs I will admit we know nothing about. Might be nice if somebody knew something about it. And maybe I'll get around to doing that someday. And if you want me back, I'll go and dig into the Lexington photos we have, and we'll do that. Having wasted all that time, you want to click the next slide up, pretty please. Okay, I had to throw this up for you guys. They were long, gleaming steel things that raced marching by. I can't read the thing from way back here. I'm sorry that. I assume you guys out there can Zoom land, can read this. And basically, it's like a gentleman explained to his son what a railroad used to be, a passenger train staying in front of an abandoned depot. Sad commentary upon our world. And if you happen to get up to Covington and you see the old Covington Depot, it is now an office building, but sort of look in, it's a strange depot. I'm going off on a side story. They raised the track in the city. The depot remained at street level, and the track is about 24 feet above the station. So you go in there, and there's steps in that going up, and it looks like you're in New York or Chicago when you view the station. They have covered the entrances on the top so you can't get up on top, and the baggage elevators have collapsed into rust, but still an interesting depot to look at. I'm going to beat on this a little bit more. As a kid, when I'd go over there, the track, the bridge that went across Pike Street up there, I was always amazed at the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad when they put that in and laid mosaic tile in it. I mean, mosaic tile, these neat designs and everything. Well, when I was up there the other day looking at it, it wasn't mosaic designs they leave. It was just like what you guys did a minute ago. They printed it out on canvas and pasted it up there. And it looked like it was a mosaic design up there, but it was nothing but a canvas printed on, pasted. Okay, having wasted your time, we'll now move on to some real pictures. This is the famous picture of Frankfort, looking at the depot, looking at the L&N pay train on the left, the tunnel in the background, and the arsenal up above. I was just recently, this is a really sad commentary. I was down at the twin tunnels on the L&N. What's that, tunnel 14 and 15? Pictures I took before, I can't take anymore. They had in the latest issue of Railroad and Rail Fans, the one on the coal miner's daughter, they showed some pictures of the trains running. You can't take those pictures anymore. You can't take this picture anymore and take the picture of the arsenal in the background. Why? Cotton picking duplicates trees. All you tree huggers out there, you want the trees to grow and they're hiding all the scenery. You can't see anything more for all the trees there. I was just amazed that when I was out there, I went rail fanning 2 weeks ago up to Virginia, West Virginia. All these pictures I used to take, you can't take anymore. And even in Frankfort, you can't take pictures. Okay, having got off that subject, let's get back on. That's the pay train there. The pay train came in once a month. Everybody came down, was paid once a month. Getting aboard the train, you're paid in cash, coins, maybe paper money, but generally coins. On the left-hand side, which is where now the Kentucky History Center is, that was boarding houses and saloons. And when I first came to Frankfort and began to do some railroad talks, I had ladies, so my age now, I guess, they used to comment that the great fear was that when their husband was paid, that instead of heading home, he went across the street to the bars and the boarding houses and blew the money there. That some of the wives who were more assertive stood at the end of the pay car, so when the husband got off, they took the paycheck from his hand. I can understand this, you know, protecting the family. But I think it was a very interesting comment about this picture, and the more I learn about what's going on within the scene. If you've been to Frankfort, you know the umbrella shed's gone. The depot still stands, and of all things, it is owned by the highway contractors in Kentucky. I guess that tells you about the status of railroads. The track through town is owned by R.J. Corman. The right-of-way is owned by CSX. Apparently, it is very normal for CSX to sell the track, but retain ownership of the right-of-way. Next picture, please. Keep going. There's some spaces between it. This is up at LaGrange. This is Louisville and Frankfort engine. If you don't know your history, you have the Lexington, Ohio, built from Lexington to Frankfort, which then, when they build it down through the hill and through the tunnel, becomes the Lexington, Frankfort. And then you get to Louisville and Frankfort. The Lexington and Ohio arrives at Frankfort in 1836, 35, I should say. It becomes the Lexington, Frankfort in 1849. And in 1851, the Louisville and Frankfort arrives. So this is supposedly the first steam locomotive carrying the train for the complete run from Louisville to Frankfort. Interesting about this is some years ago, the photographer, Steve Barry, he'd been up at Summer Rail in Cincinnati. I know I'm going all over the place. Had come down to Midway to photograph the R.J. Corman aluminum train going through town. And I came over to visit with him, watch him, and he's sitting there and he's got his camera and everything pointed towards Lexington. I said, wait a minute, this is a northbound train, isn't it? He said, yeah. I said, well, I know you're facing south, but we're dealing with railroads. Timetable north and south. It goes over to your little thing about putting arrows in. It doesn't have nothing to do with geographic direction. And as you run from Louisville to Lexington, you're running north. Why is that? Because when you leave Louisville, you go to LaGrange. You're running north, right? And then you swing south. So I called R.J. Corman, dispatcher. They confirmed it. We spent 5 minutes because the train was outside of town, turning the lights and everything around to get the picture. You may have seen that picture of that on their website, the R.J. Corman train coming through town. Okay, next one, please. This is over at Frankfort. This is 10 Mile Curve. This picture is from 1890. This is at the bottom of Glens Creek Road. An engineer working the track between Frankfort and Lexington has to be top notch. You're coming down Jet Hill. You're facing up towards Jet Hill. Frankfort is off to the left. you're coming down Jet Hill, and also you go in this 10-mile-an-hour curve. That's what the speed limit is, 10 miles per hour going through here. And then you swing off, go through the tunnel into Frankfort. But really coming out of Frankfort, going to Lexington, it's a bad curve coming into this. You're hitting this thing at 10 miles per hour, and then you come out of it, and you hit that grade. I think it's like 2-mile grade from here up to the top of Jet Hill, all the way over to, my mind just shut down on me, I'm sorry, to climbing up and out. So the engineers, he can't get any speed up. If you go over there now, Mr. Corman, right before he died, opened up a quarry on the west side of Frankfort, out by Sheep Pen Road, and was filling this side in over here so they could, and not straighten the curve out, that isn't quite right, but lessen the curve. They dumped a fair amount of dirt, and then since Mr. Corman died, the headshed people decided not to do anymore. So if you go over there, you'll find about 3/4 of it's filled in, but the final fourth never got finished, and we still have the 10-mile curve there. You could never take this picture today. Trees, trees, trees. Okay, next picture. In Frankfort, this is the original depot in town. The Lexington Frankfort came towards us through the tunnel. The Louisville and Frankfort came into us it's the other way. They had in the depot where you pulled in the depot. By the way, when the Lexington Frankfort and Louisville Frankfort reached Frankfort, they did not connect, even though they were built both the standard gauge. It took them a year to figure out this was fairly stupid, and they connected the tracks, and they became the Louisville, Frankfort, and Lexington. No such railroad existed. That was their marketing gimmick. And they sold the tickets and everything, and then they divvied out the money to which railroad should get it based upon who rode on what. You're looking through the tunnel with the arsenal on the top. The arsenal was built 1850, and in 1975 or 74, it was changed in the Kentucky Military History Museum. Next one, please. This is the new depot, the one that's there now. It is built in 1907. Frankfort was the temporary capital of Frankfort until roughly 1907. I'm serious, it was the temporary capital. Every time the legislature met, they were going to move the capital, either Louisville, Lexington, or Danville. It was only when they build the present capital that they decide, yes, we're going to be the permanent capital. That old depot you saw in the previous picture stayed here until 1907 when they built this depot. The building straightly down there is the terminal house. It served as the depot for Frankfort while they were replacing the old depot. And apparently it has served as the depot for Frankfort back when the Lexington, Ohio reached Frankfort. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's what I've been told. Next slide. By the way, you notice there's the same thing. And then the next one, you notice the rails are not in place. These are showing that the station is being built. I guess the rails were out for a short time till they laid all new rails in. Looking directly over the station is the Capitol Hotel, site of many of the political gatherings in Frankfort. Numerous stories about that. The building burnt in 1910 or thereabouts. It then became the State National Bank, and now it's Whitaker Bank. Okay, next one, please. Another view, there's our view of the depot with the tracks in place. If you look on the left-hand side and you see that track turning off the left, that's the Kentucky Midland track, or should I call it the Frankfort and Cincinnati Railroad, or was it Railway track? So that was the lead back to the L&N Yard and the Frankfort and Cincinnati that. And of course, then we got the track straight through. All the track on the right is gone. The main line track is in. The track over the F&C is in about 1,000 feet. Corman uses that to park some maintenance away equipment in, and they also park special excursions there. Generally, they show up when the regular session of the legislature in place, and they entertain the legislators over there. Used to be a good gig for me because Mr. Corman would have me there in my CNO conductor's uniform. I didn't get to go in. I just stood at the bottom of the steps inviting the legislators in. And then at the end of it, somebody would bring me out a glass of wine and some hors d'oeuvres that were left over. So I got the leavings from what the legislators didn't eat. Next one, please. Oh, back up. Interesting. Look off the right. Do you see those buildings off the right? Those were a number of stores over there. And they got to those stores down along that street on the back side of the depot. Well, when the highway contractors bought the place, they had a survey done of the thing. And lo and behold, that street over there is not a public street. It's part of the property of the depot. And they went to those building owners over there and said, hey guys, we're going to turn all this into parking space. And you wound up with all those people who had been there moving elsewhere, and some of those buildings being torn down. Strange things that you find out when you survey property and check the deed. I just had to throw that in. Okay, next one. Another view of the depot being built. That church steeple you see there is no longer there. It was lost in a tornado umpteen years ago. The the stone building to the left is the annex of the Capitol Hotel, now the Capital City Museum. By the way, the museum is free, so come on over and visit us someday. Next one, please. Another view of the depot. And we'll just pop on. I threw in a bunch of depot pictures. Another view of the depot. That is actually a Chesapeake and Ohio train in. On the left-hand side is the guard shack, the gentleman who came out to protect it when the trains came in town. The track in the foreground is the Capital City. I'm trying to remember its last name. Capital City streetcar line. It went through a number of names, but the actual owners at the very end was Kentucky Traction and Terminal, the same guys who owned the streetcars over here in Lexington and Maysville and Winchester, and ran the interurban from Lexington to Paris, Paris, Georgetown, Nicholasville, Versailles, and Frankfort. Okay, next one. Another view of the depot. Those are the boarding houses and saloons across the way, which is now the Kentucky History Center. One more. This is a more modern view of the depot. Looking back, we have very few photographs of the depot. Next one. That is an L&N passenger train in, if I remember correctly. The L&N quit passenger service to Frankfort about 1954, if I remember correctly, and the CNO took over. Now, it's interesting. The CNO only had track rights between Lexington and Louisville. They were not allowed to drop off or pick up freight between Lexington and Louisville, and they were allowed to provide passenger service to Frankfort and Emnitz and LaGrange before they put in the cutoff. When the cutoff went in, they were allowed to provide passenger service to Frankfort and to Shelbyville. When the L&N ceased passenger service, the CNO was allowed to provide passenger service to Midway, Frankfort, Shelbyville. On their way to Louisville, they could drop passengers off. Is that right? Yeah, drop passengers off. And on their way from Louisville to Lexington, they could pick up passengers at Anchorage. Did I say that right? Let me go back. On their way to Louisville, they could drop off passengers at Anchorage, but not pick up passengers. On their way from Louisville to Frankfort, they could not drop off passengers, but they could pick up passengers at LaGrange. That was L&N rules. Okay, next one. Another steam locomotive in the station, L&N, as far as I know. Next one. Just some nice pictures of steam locomotives within the station. Our pictures are a little bad. I tried to whatever we do, we play with them on your computer, and I'm not the best person to do that. If anybody's an expert, want to cover the museum and volunteer, well, happy to have you. Next one, please. Oh, a snow scene. I understand this was good money for the guys who hung out in the saloon, because the city did not plow the streets. And when it snowed, the L&N station master would hit the various saloons and hire the guys to come out and shovel the snow from around the depot and some of the track. So strange, different world. We had street running in Frankfort at this time. As you go to Frankfort now, you know the track's in a separate runaway, but it was street running back then. Next one. A view of that guard shack with the gentleman. You can see a stop sign there to walk out on the street and stop the automobile traffic as trains came in and out of the station. Not only passenger trains, but the freight trains running through. The city of Frankfort was served by the L&N, and the Frankfort and Cincinnati could not come out on the main line except for the Cardinal. The freight trains had to stay back within the yard. Next one, please. A view from top the hill looking down on the depot with the new Capitol City Hotel on back, now the bank. Next one. This is supposed to ride to Lexington. It had at one time run from Louisville to Frankfort, then took the Kentucky Highland track to Millville and Versailles, on over to Nicholasville, Richmond, Irving, Ravenna, on down to Hazard. But when they took that line out in 32, they just stopped the train at Lexington and did not run the passengers on over to Winchester, which I think is a little strange, but I'm not L&N management. Okay, next one, please. Okay, some flood scenes. Frankfort floods, used to flood. We built a flood wall. Long story about that. But here we got a train running through town in the floods. Of course, you can do with a diesel today, but you could run your steam power through the water. I always wondered about that with your friction bearings. Didn't the water get in the friction bearings? Problems. Next one, please. A view down Broadway, looking down the flood within the town. The depot on the left, the track's all underwater. One more. Another view of the depot underwater. We supposedly have a flood wall around town that will protect. There's an above ground and an underground flood wall. Go down Main Street into Frankfort. First came there, caves that were fed by the river. Next one, please. Another flood scene. We got technical problems. Okay, I'll hold it up near my mouth. How's this? Is this better? Okay, I should have done this in the first place. I apologize. Okay, we are now looking down the city street towards the tunnel. And this is a C&O train coming through town through the floodwater. Amazing that they're running through town on this. Next one, please. I find this one very interesting. This is a view of the tunnel. Notice the water's coming through the tunnel. Gentlemen, I will tell you that flood wall does not protect the tunnel. So if the water gets high enough on the east side of the tunnel, the city's going to flood again. I've asked a few people about that, and I get blank look. We got the telltales hanging down over the west end of the tunnel. Next one. Okay, this is a view down through Frankfort, showing how we used to have street running. This is down in front of the old Capitol. Next one. This is coming off of the siding from the L&N Frankfort to Cincinnati yard. I think those are cars with alcohol on board. I can't tell. Kill the light over there to see a little bit better. Okay, we're going to kill the light in here so I can look just a little better. Yeah, that's I take it back. That's going into the yard, and he's pulling a tank car of alcohol. We used to move alcohol a lot in the tank cars. Alcohol and spirits. Spirits being that which you can drink, and alcohol which the federal government has told you to put poison in, so you can't drink it. Spirits you pay taxes on, alcohol you don't. The back at the end of this track was the at that time the old Stag Distillery, now Buffalo Trace. On out the F&C line was the old Granddad Distillery and the one over at Stamping Ground. I can't remember that one. And then up on the Benson Creek, we had Famous Brand and Kennebec Distillery. And then, of course, out on the old Millville extension was the Old Crow, Old Taylor, and LeBrow and Graham distilleries. So they did move alcohol around. Some of this would go over to Bardstown. At one point, they were shipping the spirits up to Indiana. The Commonwealth of Kentucky got greedy and raised the taxes upon stored spirits. So they began to move the stored spirits up to Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and Cincinnati, Ohio, and began to age the bourbon in the barrels up there, and then bringing it back to Kentucky to be bottled. The Commonwealth of Kentucky learned the errors of its way and re-lowered the taxes back down. So you now have all this stuff being stored in Frankfort and aging in Frankfort. And you notice they also changed the rules that you've got now serve bourbon in the distilleries, and that they can sell bourbon in the distilleries, and that you can buy drinks in a restaurant and carry them out. It's all driven by tax money, good people. Okay, next one, please. I'm going to guess this is an L&N passenger train coming through town. Generally, the C&O trains were double-headed due to problems with weight restrictions on the locomotives. The C&O track from Ashland to Lexington was a lousy track, and the L&N track from Lexington to Louisville back in these days, it was basically class 2 track when they blinked their eyes and nudged the FRA inspector, is the way I get it. It wasn't, there was real problems with it. But anyway, next one, please. L&N locomotive, I'll call it that, passing in front of the old Capitol. Serafini's restaurant is here on your right. On the left is Mortimer's Inn, Irish pub, and this is the area in Frankfort in which you are allowed on the mall to come out with your drinks of alcoholic beverages, sit and eat. And this is where the concerts are held. Next one, please. We got an L&N train come out through the tunnel. No, it isn't. Because look to the left where you see sitting there, a fire truck. The engine had caught on fire, and the fire department was there putting the engine fire out. The signals are now gone, and this is all dark territory we're running in. That white building on the right was the tunnel house, which was, we were told at one time, was the depot when they were building the new depot. The big brick building on the left was a factory served by the Frankfort and Cincinnati. It is now going to be made into a boutique hotel with a bar serving 500 different brands of bourbon. We'll see if it happens. Next one, please. Aha, the Cardinal, the Frankfort and Cincinnati famous Cardinal, now over at Kentucky Railroad Museum. It ran until 1952 when it suffered a broken axle. Thereafter, the superintendent put people in his car, which was a road rail vehicle, and ran them back and forth to Paris. They were able to abandon passenger service shortly thereafter, but you can see they did carry LCL cargo in that open hatch. There was a sign to ship by the Frankfort and Cincinnati. We have it over at the Capital City Museum. Unfortunately, it's in storage and I can't get them to put it out on display. Next one, please. Back up on that. No, this is not the interurban. This is the Frankfort and Cincinnati. This is the Cardinal. It was a diesel power. There was two of them. One went to Cuba, and this one went over to the Kentucky Railroad Museum. The interurban ran on a separate track. The interurban went up Main Street over Versailles Road to Lexington to Versailles. If you drive US 60 between Frankfort and Lexington, look to the west, particularly around Ashford Stud, and you can see shelves cut into the side of the hillside there. That's where the interurban ran. Look at Ashford Stud. Within their gate, there's a waiting room for the interurban. You get over near Versailles and Pin Oak Farm on the left, which is that University of Kentucky agricultural station. As you approach it, going towards Versailles, look over. At that point, the track is crossed, and you can see the right of way, the interurban over on that side. As you get towards Lexington, the interurban disappears. But as you drop down to the valley between, I don't know what you would call it, at the bottom of Keeneland, there's that valley down there with the church down there. That was the KNT Park, which name I can't remember. Joyland and that were the two parks. Joyland was the park with the amusement rides. This was the picnic area for Kentucky Traction Terminal. Okay, next one. We got a Frankfort and Cincinnati locomotive coming out on the main line. Whoa, I told you that couldn't happen. Well, actually, the F&C locomotives came out, but when they came out, that meant they had an L&N crew on board. Sometimes due to circumstances with locomotive availability, the L&N crew used the F&C to bring cars out on the main line. Next one. This is the famous picture of the L&N train on the way to Lexington with the Frankfort and Cincinnati Cardinal next to it. And they're transloading some baggage and mail between the trains. This, of course, is pre-1951 when the Cardinal suffers its axle break. Next one. The Cardinal coming in off of the siding. We got it, I assume, an F&C steam locomotive back there. And this is all gone now, with the exception of the building on the white building on the right is still there. The yard back there is all covered in blacktop. If you got a brownfield, I assume you guys all know what an EPA brownfield is. And the Commonwealth of Kentucky gets hold of it. They cover it in blacktop and turn it into a parking lot, which nobody ever uses. But it's a sealed brownfield, so we took care of the problem. Next one, please. We got our L&N train coming out through the tunnel. I assume heading for Louisville. Next one. Oh, this is the famous picture. The L&N had two trains in town. There is, of course, the double track at the station. Generally, the train from Lexington to Louisville came in before the L&N train from Louisville to Lexington got there. Today, the train from Louisville got there first, and the L&N train came in late. The Louisville train began to pull from the station. There was room enough with the L&N train coming on the other side. As soon as the Louisville train moved, the conductor said, well, there's no more of the correction. The motorman of the streetcar said, well, there's no more train coming. And guess what? He was wrong. and the O&N train flipped him over. He was on the way out to, boy, my mind's going bad. The park on the, we'll forget the name of the park. He had one passenger on board. He and the passenger were injured. And there is, let me see the next picture, see if we got the picture. No, we don't. There's a picture of this where they brought up a chain, wrapped it around the streetcar, hooked it onto the front of the locomotive, and flipped the streetcar over by using leverage of pulling the car over with. The buildings there in the background are all gone. They were torn down, and now they're a parking lot. Next one, please. That winter scene I'm talking about, they've gone to the bar, they've hired the guys, and they're out there cleaning the switch, getting the snow off the rails to keep the trains running. Next one. Another view of an L&N train heading through the tunnel. He's bound for Lexington. Next one. An L&N train coming through town, heading for Louisville. He's got 2 locomotives on. The climb, as you leave Lexington, you're running flat. Then all of a sudden at, I'll call it jet for better terms, you start dropping down the hill into Frankfort. You get through Frankfort, and then you're on Benson Creek, and you climb up and out of the hill. Then as you get over Louisville, you got that long drop down into Louisville. The engines were needed coming down the hill for braking into the valley, pulling up and out of the hill, and then again for braking, dropping down into Louisville. I had somebody explain that to me. It wasn't just to get up and out of the valley, it was to provide some braking coming down into the valleys. Next one. From the old Capitol, this is supposedly the last CSX train to run through town before Mr. Corman took it over, which I believe is the year 2004. I believe that's when CSX sold the rails, but not the land, to Mr. Corman. And that's why Corman was never able to run that dinner train to Frankfort that he wanted to, because CSX said, no way, you aren't going to run any passenger trains on our track. And that's also the famous story about when Mr. Corman took a steam locomotive to Louisville, from HK Tower to downtown at CSX track. And then Mr. Corman has the track from, I forget what the point is, back to Nugent Sand. And they went back in there, turned it, and tried to come out. And Jacksonville said, ain't going to happen, young man. It is going to happen. They did a lot of negotiation, and they left him bring his train out. And that's why you got that Y built at Christiansburg, so he could turn his steam locomotive. So he could only run the steam locomotive between Lexington, where there's a Y, and Christiansburg, where there was a Y, so he could turn it. Next one. In Frankfort, CSX train going past the station, heading towards the tunnel. Next one. I got it. Dave Morse took this picture. Let me give Dave Morse credit for this. Got out in the big snowstorm and caught this light unit running through town, plowing the track. He's heading towards Lexington. Next one, please. CSX in that siding won the Pumpkins. For those who don't know this, somewhere around in 2000, CSX took a lot of its locomotives that were on their last legs, painted them orange, and said they were only supposed to use a maintenance away service. They're parked on the lead back. Occasionally, when they were power hungry, you would see this on mainline trains. The Pumpkins lasted about 5 years and disappeared. Next one. This is Mr. Corman's train coming through town. Central Bank in Lexington used to rent his train for the Derby, and they would run through. Well, we say, wait a minute, it's a passenger train. Yeah, he could run charters, but he couldn't run regular passenger service. And I think this is because CSX at this time also used to run its Derby train out of Frankfort. And I hate to say this, stupid politicians. There's always stupid politicians who don't know what the heck they're talking about and do stupid things and back themselves in the pocket. I used to work the Kentucky Derby train, Mary Ann, my wife, and I, for the state of Kentucky. And then we had somebody running for office that said, oh, as soon as I'm elected, I'm going to get rid of that. So we're not wasting taxpayers' money hauling all these politicians that to Louisville to the Derby. That's a big waste. Well, it wasn't a big waste. The Kentucky Derby train run by the Commonwealth of Kentucky was an industrial promotion tool. The people who rode that train were people who had Ford, Toyota, the big industries in Kentucky, their board directors, their presidents were aboard, or people who are going to come to Kentucky, it looked like, and establish a plant. They were on board the train. Yes, there were local county judges on. There were other politicians on, but they were ones from that industrial person's area. Just, the country runs on sneezing or cuddling up with each other. I hate to say that. People think that's bad, but you got to build relationships. And the Derby train was, as far as I'm concerned, one of the greatest way to build relationships. It costs the state money, but I wish somebody had sat down and figured out how much industry and other things that brought to Kentucky are meant that remained in Kentucky. Do this drinking, eating, and handshaking together. Next one, please. A view down at the in that siding. This is the CSX Derby train sitting down there. Half the train was CSX, and the other half was the governor's. The front end was CSX. The rear end was the states. I was down there one day, walking along, taking some pictures, and this guy came up, began to talk with me, and we're talking along the way, and he's asking me questions, and it's general railroad bullshit, put it bluntly. Two rail fans having a great time together. And he's nicely dressed, and he's got this tie on, a CSX tie. As we got down the rear of the end of the train, I said to him, you shouldn't turn your back on me. I said, because I might bop you over the head to take that CSX tie. That's one of the neatest things I ever saw. And he laughed at me. So I walked on down. I came back. As I came back up, the African-American cook is standing there. And he says to me, hey, Pete Carpenter, get that? Pete Carpenter said that you wanted his tie. Here it is. Little do you know who you may be trackside. Good Lord. Okay, next one, please. Another view back in that siding. CSX locomotive sitting back there. Notice the derail set. Next one, please. Derby train pulling through town. Everybody would turn out to watch the Derby train come through town. All you guys would be out chasing the train. I mean, it was a rail fan paradise to watch the Derby train. Next one. Coming up and over the bridge. My mind is shutting down on me. I knew some of the CSX guys. You grow up with a generation, you know each other, and then all of a sudden these guys leave and a new set of guys come along. You don't know who those new guys, you can't get together. Anyway, I'm sitting down here and they're starting to pull. Look at that locomotives that are coming up. And all of a sudden I'm patting my head and pointing at my eyes, patting my head and pointing at my eyes. I think some of you know what I'm trying to say. As I got up there, my friend sticks his head out the window and he says, what the hell's wrong with you? I said, headlights. And he looked at me and he reached in, at which point the headlights came on. Yeah, they forgot to turn their headlights on as they were leaving town. Next one, please. Another view of the train sitting there, coming up and over the bridge over the Kentucky River. Next one. Okay. This was the L&N Railroad Depot in town, the freight depot. The F&C shared it. We're looking down along the track coming off of town, going back in. This is all gone now. This is Commonwealth Credit Union back here now. Another view. Next one. Another view of the L&N Freight House in town, the Lesson Carlo Logue. Amazing, all the freight that moved through Frankfurt at one time. And I mean, it was there, and then the next day it wasn't there. It's just containers. I know it was containers and piggybacks that did this place in. Next one, please. Another view. Downtown, state office building on the left. See it? Commonwealth Credit Union here now. Well, I'm looking at back from Broadway, looking back here towards Clinton Street. Next one, please. Another view thereof. It was a major. Frankfurt at one time was really an industrial town downtown. Shoe factory, broom factory, chair factory, clothing facility, the distilleries. There were just a number of, you shouldn't call them major, minor businesses in town. Up through the 1960s, it all closed, disappeared. I guess they went to China or Japan or somewhere. Next one, please. Another view of that warehouse facility. Next one. Okay, matchbook cover. Occasionally you'll find this on the internet. It's a neat little souvenir. Next one. That's that back up, please. That's the GE locomotive they had, the 100 before they got the bigger locomotives. Next one. And that's their route, showing it from Frankfurt to Georgetown, Paris, and the connections in between. Next one, please. A view in the a view in Frankfurt and Cincinnati Yard. As I said, this is all gone now, and it's a blacktop field. And on the very right, you can just barely see it, is the state office building. So you're looking from the yard back towards Frankfurt. Next one. A view down the yard, F&C caboose there, locomotive. I mean, I hate to say it, I didn't take the pictures that I should have took because it was always going to be there. And then one day it wasn't there, and I'm going, I didn't take any pictures. Why didn't I take any pictures? Because I was stupid, very stupid. I'll tell you how stupid I was. Last weekend, my wife and I went up and flew in the Ford tri-motor aircraft in Frankfurt. Guess who didn't have his camera with him? Yep, me. Stupid. Okay, next picture. A view of the Frankfurt and Cincinnati office building. This was a concrete block structure. It stood for a number of years. It was torn down maybe 8-9 years ago. Some of the people, when they closed it, unfortunately, I wasn't one of them. They just closed the door and left. And some rail fans went in there and liberated a whole bunch of stuff. I secondhandly got some of it and then gave it off to Shad Harpool. My wife said, you gotta get stuff out of the house. We'll keep going through that argument. So that's the Frankfurt and Cincinnati locomotive shed and office building. Next one, please. Back up. I believe you can see the sign Frankfurt and Cincinnati up on the roof. It's a crime that sign was not saved. That's one of those crimes on humanity. Somebody should have saved that. Next one. A view of the locomotive place, another view of it with a locomotive sitting outside. Next one. You can see the L&N's down there by the place. You're looking over there is the Capitol Plaza Tower, which they imploded, 4 or 5 years ago and dropped it down. No more there. That building, by the way, going to do a side story, was the Standard Oil building of Chicago. And I never understood the whole thing with the Commonwealth of Kentucky. But they needed to throw up a building real fast like. So they got the architect of the Standard Oil building in Chicago to design this building. He cut the Standard Oil building in half and then shrunk it by volume by half. and put that building up. Now, the reason why I'm telling you is none of you guys have ever been in there. That building had a row of offices around the window. It had about a 3-foot space, and then they had some more desks going around. That was it. 70-some% of that building was central core. They did not shrink the inner side, the elevator shafts of that building that was twice as tall and twice as big. It was the strangest building you were ever in. What was even stranger about it was, I know I'm off the topic, was all the AV and heating equipment was up on the 13th and 14th floor. And when it all went bad and they decided, how are we going to get this out? They couldn't figure out how to get it out. So that's another one of the reasons why I got tore down. Really weird building. Okay, next one, please. Our sign up on the building, round to the office. I'm Frankfort to Cincinnati. Never got to Cincinnati. For those who don't know the story, the Kentucky Midland Railroad was going to build from Frankfort to Prestonsburg, Kentucky. It got to Georgetown. This is 1880 or so. I don't have the exact date. Went bankrupt, was sold on the courthouse steps, was bought by the Frankfort and Cincinnati, which was going to build from Frankfort to Cincinnati. And they never did boohoo with the thing. However, they did put out in 18, somewhere around there, a map of the line that showed it starting from over in north of Lawrenceburg. What's that town up there? Ashton? Starts with an A. Anyway, if you look at your little map, you see a town north of Lawrenceburg on the Southern Railroad. Alton, I'm sorry. Showed a railroad running from Alton to Frankfort to Georgetown, on over towards Mount Sterling, and on up to Prestonsburg. And this is on their timetable, the front of their timetable. I can imagine some poor sob getting this map. He's up in Chicago and says, oh, I'm going to go to Prestonsburg. I'll just buy a ticket on the Southern to Alton, get off, and then buy a ticket on the Frankfort and Cincinnati and go over, and he gets off. And there's no Frankfort and Cincinnati there. There was no truth in advertising back. Anyway, off of the subject. Next one, please. Another view into the yard. We're now looking out of the yard over towards ancient age or old stag, whatever you want to call it, distillery. Next one. Another view in the yard, except we're looking back the other way. They ran steam locomotives. They kept them around for some number of railfan excursions. I unfortunately never was on them. They bought these 3 little GE diesels, which replaced all the steam locomotives. If you look, I'm going to say it's 1948, but don't hold me to that. And you go in a lot of the trade publications, you'll find advertisements from GE saying they bought 3 diesel locomotives and replaced all these steam locomotives and put X number of guys out of work because they didn't need them any longer. Okay, next one, please. That's that famous postcard view of the Frankfort and Cincinnati locomotive. Pinsley wound up owning the Frankfort and Cincinnati, and there's been a book recently published on their railroad. I was going to buy it until I saw the price of it. Not the Frankfort and Cincinnati, but the whole conglomeration. I understand it sold out before it even went into print, so maybe I should have bought it. Next one. A crew standing in front. Been nice if somebody had ID'd them. We got lots of pictures of people in the museum. No names on them. Next one, please. An engineer. No name. If you don't know it, when Pinsley took it over, I should have said Pinsley, he added some non-union contract requirements, and the workers went on strike. And Pinsley went and brought in scabs, I guess is what you call them, and never entered in renegotiation with the union officials. And Pinsley and Frankfort was a very bad name up until fairly recently, because most people don't know who they were. And it's interesting is that the railroad went broke because it never paid any dividends and was going into losing money. Bill Ambrose and I wrote a book on the Frankfort and Cincinnati called The Whiskey Route. Take a look at that. And yeah, they weren't paying dividends, but they were paying the president and vice president one hell of a salary. That's where all the money was going. Next one, please. That's a view of that. The other motor car. This is the one that went to Cuba. Wait a minute. I can't remember. One goes to F&C and one goes to Cuba. Can't. Okay. Yeah, but one of the F&C cars, when they shut down, they sent one of the, sold it to Cuba, and they sent one over to, I think this is the one, let me stand correct. I think this is the one that's over at Kentucky Railroad Museum, and I think the other one went to Cuba. Next one. See, there's two different signs. I think this is the one that goes to Cuba. Next one. And another view of them. Next one. There's the famous thing, the Kentucky Midland route, reflecting back to it. By the way, there are two Kentucky Midland railroads in Kentucky. The second Midland Railroad was built in the early 1900s down around Central City. So if you see something called the Kentucky Midland Railroad, you got to know which one it is, whether it was one in Central Kentucky or the one down in Muhlenberg County. Next one. Picture of the one of the steam locomotives, number one, on the turntable. Next one. Don't know who the gentleman is. This apparently is when they're starting to get rid of the steam locomotives. They never had a new steam locomotive. Everything they had was second and third hand. Some was even fourth and fifth hand. Next one. Just some views of the steam locomotives. You guys, your steam fans, can most probably tell me more about them. Next one. And one more. Many rail groups came to Frankfort and shot pictures of these. Next one. And this was a money-making thing for them. And of course, this is the good old days when they just loaded everybody in the back of a gondola car and off you went. Next one. They, like a lot of railroads, never had a number 13. They went to 12 to 14. Next one. In the yard with the state office building in the background. I was told this was a Cincinnati Railroad Club excursion. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But you can see all the rail fans over there on the left. Next one. That was the shoe factory in the background. Big World War II contracts. Interesting. This is another side story. When I first came to Frankfort, I was doing my railroad stuff. I had a lot of ladies talk to me, and they said, if you remember correctly, World War I, II, Korean War, Vietnam War, if your husband, son was killed in the war, the Western Union boy showed up with a telegraph to tell you it had happened. And they said that when the Western Union boy would show up, the word immediately went through the factory and all work production stopped. Management found the woman who the telegram was to be sent to. They met with her, gave her saying, killed, wounded, captured, whatever it was. Her co-workers gathered around, took her home or did what they needed to do. The rest of the place went back to production. But what I found was really interesting was most of the number of women I talked to who received such a one, husband killed, son was killed, they went back to work the next day because it was a thing to do because the war was on. Next one, please. F&C locomotive. This is the one that came from the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. See the B&O shield up front. They painted out B&O and put F&C underneath it. Actually, this is still the B&O. They haven't got around to painting it yet. Next. Frankfort and Cincinnati, one of the small GEs. Next. That's one of the ones from the Baltimore and Ohio. Next. And another from the Baltimore and Ohio. Next. And another one. Aha, there's a story about this one. Notice that there's the dome in the front is not up there. It's painted black. Next one, please. Another view of it with where there should be the Capitol dome painted black. I think I put the slide in. Next one, please. Another picture of one of those locomotives. I took a picture of these, by the way, when they were boarded up, being sent away, and sent it in, and Railfan published it. So I've had a picture published in Railfan. Next one, please. One more. Nicely painted. Next one. Inside the car barn. Oh, one more, please. Back in the weeds. And we'll see if he can figure out how to get that out. Okay, next one, please. Aha! There it is. It's in the wrong place. Now you know why it got painted black. The Pinsley people, I think they were up in Boston, were unhappy when they saw this logo on the front. If you can't read it underneath, it says the Bourbon Route. The F&C was known as the Bourbon Route because it served those three distilleries. Ancient Age, Old Granddad, and the one over at Stamping Ground, whose name I can't think of right now. So when they found out about this, they immediately ordered it painted out, and that's why you wound up with that black shield, because they painted it out, and the Capitol Dome never got put back in. Next one. F&C caboose, the L&N boxcar in the background. Snowy day. Next one. Another F&C caboose. One more. Another view of the former F&C caboose. Okay, one more. This isn't in Frankfort. This is out at Schweitzer. I just threw this in. This is the, my mind's shutting down on me. I forget what you call this vehicle. You hand pump it to get down the road. But it's, I think, a very neat picture. Next one. This is actually over, I think, at Georgetown. I'm not sure where this is. But we got a signal tower there. So I'm guessing it's Georgetown. I just threw this in, figuring you can see he's crossing a track, and somebody out there in the video land would come back and say, I know where that is, because we sure don't. Or it's over at Paris. Next one, please. As I said, they had a piggyback yard down there. L&N piggyback in there thing. A story. Every once in a while in life, I do something extremely stupid. As I look back upon this, this is one of the dumbest, stupidest things I ever did in life. I mean, you're going to really realize how stupid I was. Anyway, the F&C calls me, and I'm working in the Frankfurt Arsenal at that time. That was my office. I was a billing manager. And they said, we got 2 M60 tanks down here at the yard for you. Where do you want us to do with them? And dumb like I said to him, gee, I really think those were supposed to go to the Frankfurt Arsenal up in Philadelphia. Just think about it, guys. I could have gone down there and signed that piece of paper and had 2 M60 tanks to drive around, legitimately sent to me. I said, no, I think then they checked, and yes, it was supposed to go into the Frankfurt Arsenal outside of Philadelphia, not to the Frankfurt Arsenal in Frankfort, Kentucky. I'd love to go back that, 50 some years ago and replay that whole situation and see if I could have actually got those 2 M60 tanks. Okay, next one, please. This is Buffalo Trace trestle over the Buffalo Trace, which gives its name to Buffalo Trace Distillery. For those who you don't know this, there used to be an eastern herd of buffalo who spent the summer up in Wisconsin and Michigan and with Minnesota. The herd would come down, cross the river at the Falls of the Ohio, come across down Benson Creek, cross at what was the ford at Frankfort. Frankfort's original name was Frank's Ford, Ford. Go up through Buffalo Trace, that dumps out where Cardinal office supply is. Head on across to Great Crossing, and then spend time over at Stamping Ground. Okay. The early Kentucky settlers thinned it out, that herd, real quick. Like, next one, please. These are some views of it. It was a very spindly bridge. They took it down right after they closed the track. I think 1986 it came down. You can still find some of the concrete foundations. This whole area you can't see is buried in trees and vines and poison ivy and other stuff. But if you want to go exploring, you can actually find some founder footers and a couple pieces of steel they didn't haul off. Next one, another view thereof. Train out and on the bridge, coming in towards town. A neat view. I'm sorry, it's a little screwed up, but right. Hatton is west of Frankfort. You had to come into Frankfort, and then you had to catch the L&N train to Hatton. Hatton's another strange place. You go out there, and I think there's two houses maybe sitting there, but there used to be a depot there. You go around Kentucky, and you find all these places. You say they had a depot here at one time. Why the heck would they have a depot here? Well, the towns disappeared along the way. And that's happened in a lot of places here in central Kentucky where there were towns and villages that just aren't anymore. You follow, if I ever do my L&N presentation, Cincinnati to Winchester, we'll show some of these places that aren't there anymore. Okay, next one, please. Another view thereof. One more. There's a view of steam locomotive coming across F&C. Or this might have been L&N. L&N actually acquired the track in 1910 for a very short time, then got their hands slapped and told, no, you got to sell it off. But there was, for a short period of time, they were running trains, Louisville, Frankfort, Georgetown, Paris, Maysville. Think about that. If they could have kept doing that, maybe that track would have hung in a little bit longer. Next one, please. Cardinal up on the trestle. Next one. A view of the trestle. 1986, I believe, it comes down. It had a 100-ton load limit, which is one of the reasons why it goes out of use, is that the old granddad distillery is bringing in this grain by grain cars. I'll go one more. Let's see if I don't. Okay, yeah, this shows the problem. As you know, the Southern went to the Big Johns, the 100-ton covered hoppers. If you look at this picture, you see a locomotive, a spacer, a grain car, a spacer, grain car, spacer, grain car. This trestle, the trestle up at the top of the hill, at which they call topside, over Thornhill bypass. You can see some of the remains of it. The bridge over the Elkhorn Creek. They just couldn't have those 100-ton hopper cars. The one up at the top of the hill collapses. The one over at Elkhorn Creek is weakened, so there's no Fed money or state money to repair this. And they just had to give up providing service to Old Crow because they couldn't run their trains there anymore. Couldn't get them over to, I guess that was Spring Hill over at I don't know, Stamping Ground. And there just wasn't enough money made to serve ancient age old stag, whatever you call it. So they basically folded. The stone quarry, which you see in the foreground, is still there. So if you go out there on Reese Avenue and you find that and you walk back up that little hollow, you're looking at Buffalo Trace. You'll find some foundations up in there of the trestle. Next one. Another view thereof. Once again, spacer cars in between. Next one. Yeah. Yeah, it became very rickety. Nice. Next one. Okay. This is the bridge across the river. You can see the bridge on the left is the original. It isn't the original railroad bridge. The original railroad bridge was the chain bridge designed by Roebling, which was a failure. They put piers underneath it. It's burnt by the Confederates in '62. They rebuilt the bridge. It washes out in '64. They rebuilt the bridge and they replaced that in '85 by the bridge you see on the left. It's got 100-ton load limits. They built this big bridge in 1929. The old bridge on the left becomes a highway bridge. They built the new bridges into the downtown, those concrete bridges. They turned this into a pedestrian bridge, did no maintenance on it, and it is now shut down because you can't even walk people over it. The state refuses to spend any money to rebuild it. I was on the committee that tried to save it, and I expect you're going to see it tore down in a year or so. The Commonwealth of Kentucky Department of Transportation is good. They want to tear something down, they don't tear it down. They just don't fund repairs on it anymore until it's so dangerous that nothing can use it. And oh my God, we need to tear it down. Okay, next one. That's a view of the finishing of the construction of the bridge, 1929. Next one. And there's the inaugural train over the bridge into town. You have no idea who any of the dignitaries are. We got tons of photos of people, and we have no idea who they are. Next one, please. This is from Buttermere Hill looking down an L&N train heading over the bridge into Frankfort. Next one. And there's the caboose of that train heading over the bridge. Next one. In town looking at the tunnel with the telltales hanging down. Next one. A view of the tunnel. Mr. Corman in, I think it's 2003, they got the contract for the Heartland Corridor, Norfolk Southern and West Virginia. They had the problem with the tunnels being too low for the double stacks. They did the proof of concept on this tunnel here, of raising the roof and widening it. If you've ever seen those goats, those wheels that's got the feet on them that they use to compact earth with, when they're building highways, they brought one of those in, except it was different, and they used it to grind the top of the roof down and the sides. And then they went over Eastwood Tunnel over Simpsonville, or Eastwood, I should say, and lowered the floor. And these were the proof of concept that you could do the tunnel. I think they ran one auto rack through and one double stack, and that's the last time any oversized car has ever gone through here. But the rail line between Lexington and Louisville can now carry double stackers and auto racks and high cube box cars. Next one. View from the other side looking at the tunnel. One more. Another view. By the way, this beautiful stonework is gone. They covered it in concrete. Shame on you, Mr. Corman. Next one. A view into the tunnel. The stupid photographers in town are always bringing the high school girls down here for their senior pictures and posing them here in the front of the tunnel. Next one. Remember, train can come at any time from any direction. This is a view from the other side of the tunnel. I need to mention this is not a colored photograph. This is a colorized picture. This was taken in black and white. It was shipped to Germany, and some artist over there decided what the rock formation looked like. He colored this without ever even seeing this. And you modelers here who are look at that colored postcard of that boxcar and have been working diligently to match that color, there's no doubt that it was never that color that was ran on that boxcar. So you can paint any color you want on your right. Next one. L&N locomotive coming through the tunnel. There was a pocket track over on this side of the tunnel where they used to keep a helper engine. Next picture. Kentucky Railroad Museum locomotive coming through. Next picture. Okay. This is over East Frankfort.
That's the bridge across the river before the new bridge went in. There was a water tower, stockyard. You notice the ventilation car there. There was a LCL facility over here. There was a locomotive shed over here, repair shop. Next one. That's a locomotive over in that area. Next one. Another locomotive over in that area. I assume these are all L&N. One more. We're looking up Benson Valley. That's a CSX train coming down. Louisville's off in the direction. One more. Up in the valley. Okay, one more, please. And another picture up in the valley. This is all Jake Foreman now. Next picture. We're up near the gun range. One more picture. Mr. Corbin's steam train coming through. He will run this over to Christiansburg, at which point they will cut off the steam locomotive and the what do you call it? The gen set will be cut off, and then the F units will take the train on into the Derby. Next one. CSX Derby train coming up through Benson Valley. Next one. Another CSX Derby train up through Benson Valley. Next one. Corman sand train up in Benson Valley. Next one. This is over on the Hermitage spur going out to Old Grand and Old Crow. Those are tank cars filled with either alcohol or spirits. I'm going to guess they're alcohol being hauled out because they used to distill a lot of alcohol. The distilleries in Kentucky don't just distill spirits, they distill alcohol for commercial and industrial purposes. Next one. Coming up and out of the valley. Over at the distillery, this is, I shouldn't say valley, this is over at the Hermitage branch. Next one. Down on the Hermitage, coming out over crossing with a tank car. Looking at the Hermitage spur, I think, I may be lying to you, I think if you've ever seen the Flim Flam Man and they drive the car over the trestle, it's either this trestle or the previous trestle where they drive the car over the trestle. That was shot on the FNC. Next one, please. Down there in the valley, track is all gone. Next one. Once again, this may have been the one. We're down at Old Taylor Distillery. Next one. This is now Old Glens Creek down there, and Keene Castle's now down here. One more. And this is the famous picture. Dave Morse once again took it. That's a Chessie locomotive back in there. This is when CSX comes in, and the local merchants are going, wait a minute, that's a C&O locomotive in there. How can he switch? And, you know, blah, blah, blah. We've been told all these years that C&O can't do anything. Well, that's because it's now CSX, and CSX owns C&O and L&N. Next one. The interurban in town, the old wooded ones getting ready to head for Lexington. Next one. The Cincinnati curbside car, one-man thing, came in 21 and allowed the the interurban to last to 34. One more. Inside, looking forward towards the control stand, looking towards the rear, and the sign up there that says Coward. That's the Coward section of the car. The picture of one of the motormen. And that's the line out along Sales Road. And that's it.